Welcome to the Conscious Radio Network's YouTube channel. Become enlightened, have fun, and tell all your friends and family to share with everyone they know. You can find us on Facebook and stay up to date on our Facebook group, or find us on Twitter, Instagram, and TikTok. Our podcasts can be found on Libsyn, iHeart, Spotify, Google Podcast, and more. Most of all, remember to go to our official website at consciousradionetwork.com for podcasts, hosts, future shows, and scheduling. We also want to welcome our international audience. Don't stop now. Enjoy the community. Subscribe today.
This is the Conscious Radio Network.
Good morning, afternoon, or evening, wherever you might be on the spaceship we call Earth. Welcome to Conscious Radio Network's weekly series, The Seance. I'm your host, Reverend Dr. Paul Mekas. If this is your first time, please click subscribe, like, share, comment, and also don't forget to follow wherever you listen to your podcasts. A special report. Back at it again. Welcome back. Part 11 of Septemics, a philosophical science, hierarchies of human phenomenon analysis, prediction of management of human affairs with Jim Marshall, founder and creator of Septemics and author of the book Septemics. Before we jump in, Jim, welcome back.
Hi, Paul. Good to see you.
Good to see you again. Good to see you again. This chapter 3 of book 2 is going to be interesting, and I'm going to soak this up like a sponge. And for those, especially, definitely tune in and soak this up, because this is going to be interesting. But anyway, 3 and 4, excuse me. But before we jump in, quick intro, recap.
Sure. Well, for those of you who don't know who I am the discoverer of hitherto unknown natural phenomena, which greatly aid in the understanding of people, from which I created a revolutionary practical philosophic system called Septemics, and published it in the book Septemics, Hierarchies of Human Phenomena. And today we're going to discuss some of the content of that book.
Yes. So let's do it. Let's get into it. We're going to start off at, where are we? Hold on. Different system here working. Oh, yeah, it would help if I brought that up. So, let me change this up here. There we go. So, the scale of government.
Right. Now, you hear people talking all the time, anytime you go to a video or a TV or a radio, about the left and the right. There is no left or right. They are arbitrary. It's not left or right. It's up or down.
Yeah.
The society is either going up or it's going down. It's not going left or right. That is a complete fabrication.
Yeah, where did that come from?
Actually, it comes from French politics from about 100 years ago.
Yeah.
Excuse me, more than 100. It's more like 150 years ago. I could go into that, but I don't want to get off track.
It's not.
So, this gives you the 7 levels of government. And anything else is a subset of this. So people could bring up, as I discussed in the chapter, well, what about monarchy and all these different other things? They all fit into this, but not in a way that you might understand. And for example, sometimes you could have a monarchy that's at level 3 and another monarchy that's at level 4. Well, from the viewpoint of the scale, it doesn't matter that they're monarchies. They are at the levels they are at. And I'm going to tell you how to determine that. First of all, this is a spiral scale, which means there is an apparent congruence between level 1 and level 7. And if you pay attention to political discourse, you will see all the time that people confuse libertarianism with anarchy. These are two different things, but they get them mixed up. There are many spiral scales, and in each of them, there is a likelihood of confusing level 1 with level 7 because they appear to be congruent, but they're not.
Mm.
Libertarian is the best possible governmental system. It's one in which the people are so upscale that very little control is needed. There's not a lot of crime. There's not a lot of corruption, okay? Because you have these are very upscale people. Now, you say, what do you mean by upscale? Well, read my book, because it has 35 scales. And you're either near the top of the scale or near the bottom of the scale or at the middle of the scale, okay? So an upscale person is somebody who is at or near the top of many of the scales. So anarchy is the worst possible situation. Anarchy is I come over to your house, I hit you over the head with a club, and I clean out your refrigerator and take your silverware, okay? That's anarchy.
Yeah.
So that is where society started with the cavemen, maybe 20,000 years ago. Okay? It was anarchy. So you see a guy, Cain and Abel, you read the Bible.
Yeah.
Right? Cain slew Abel. That's anarchy. So that is the worst. That's the worst possible outcome, because what that means is the worst psychopathic, sociopathic criminals are in control.
Mm. Uncivilized.
That is what you have on the frontier, like in the Old West, circa 1830. The only white men in the Rocky Mountains were trappers.
Mm.
They went out there because there was big money in beaver pelts. And they would go out there and lay their traps, catch, and then at the end of the year, they'd have as many as they could carry, and they'd go back to civilization and sell them.
Mm.
So those guys, there was no government out there. It was anarchy. So one trapper would find another guy and he'd see that he had a couple of hundred nice pelts and he'd kill him and take the pelts. Or some Indian band would come by and kill the guy and take his horse.
Yeah.
That's anarchy. Now, it doesn't necessarily mean murder all the time. It could only mean rape. The Indians when they would attack the white settlers, they would steal the women and rape them.
Mm.
So, if you remember if you ever read Last of the Mohicans, classic, or saw any one of several versions that were made into movies,
Yeah.
you have one of the leading ladies is captured by the Mohicans and jumps off a cliff to get away from them.
Yeah.
So she preferred suicide. So that's what you get from anarchy. So you want to be careful not to confuse libertarianism with anarchy. Now, what do I mean by libertarianism? Thomas Paine, political philosopher who was, I call, the father of the American Revolution. It was his pamphlet called Common Sense from 1775, which was distributed throughout the colonies, that got the people to rebel. And he said there, among other many brilliant things, government is at best a necessary evil.
Mm.
Okay? And that is the libertarian mantra. Government, and similarly, Thomas Jefferson famously said, that government which governs best governs least.
Yeah.
That is a libertarian government. Now, the United States used to have a libertarian government. It was called the Articles of Confederation. They cobbled together a federation of 13 states and went forward with it the best they could. It was a very libertarian government. But after a few years, it became clear to the smart people around, like Jefferson and Washington and Hamilton and Franklin and Adams, that this was not going to work.
Mm.
And this goes right to the heart of this scale, which is that the level of government is a reflection of the population. We have a downscale population, you have a downscale government. We have an upscale population, you have an upscale government. As I point out in the book, there are no major governments on earth. There may be some obscure ones that I don't know about, like Liechtenstein, or the Seychelles, because they're not in the news and I don't pay too much attention to them. Why would you? But as far as all the main ones, which I study 7 days a week, none of them are at level 1, 2, or 3.
Mm.
All of them are below that horizontal line that separates the sane governments from the insane governments. Okay?
Yeah.
That is why Earth looks the way it does. So, you had this illegal immigrant, was arrested twice. They let him go both times, and he goes out and kills Laken Riley, a 22-year-old nursing student.
Mm.
Okay? So, is that sane? If you think that's sane, you're insane.
Yeah.
And there's another guy recently who was deported 5 times. He just kept coming back, and he eventually killed somebody. That is not sane. So, what used to happen in America when we had a sane government is they would catch somebody like this and execute him. Charles Starkweather in 1957 murdered 12 people in 10 days.
Whoa.
Showed no remorse whatsoever. They caught him. He admitted it. He showed no remorse at all. Okay? And they executed him, which was the right thing to do. We're talking about a crazy person.
Yeah.
If he didn't like the way you looked at him, he just shot you. Okay? He killed the mother, father, and younger sibling of his own girlfriend.
Wow.
So, we're talking about sanity and insanity, okay? So there are 3 forms of government that are sane. Those are levels 1, 2, and 3. There are 3 forms of levels that are insane. Those are levels 4, 5, and 6. Level 7 is not really a level of government. It is rather a lack thereof.
Yeah.
When you don't have government, that's anarchy. So, like, for example, in the mafia had rules, especially the old-time mafia,
Mm.
not so much recently. But Carlo Gambino, who the head of the Gambino crime family, the biggest and the richest and the most successful of all the crime families, he was a very smart man. They never got anything on him. He died of a heart condition in his own home.
Mm.
They couldn't get anything on him. He ran his family a certain way. They had rules. Under Carlo Gambino, okay, this is not speculation. Many people have come out and admitted this. If you sold drugs, they had you killed. If you touched the wife of another one of their people, they had you killed. Okay? The rule was you don't kill civilians. So anybody who's not associated with organized crime is considered a civilian.
Yeah.
So let's say some mafia guy goes to a bar, gets drunk, pulls out his gun and shoots the guy, right? That guy is going to be found in the trunk of a car a couple of weeks later. He's a liability. They don't want him around. They had rules. You don't kill civilians.
Yeah.
Well, Even there, that's not anarchy. You know, the former mayor of Las Vegas for many years, I forgot how many years, I think he served 3 terms, if I remember correctly.
Mhm.
Oscar Goodman is his name. Before he was the mayor of Las Vegas, he was the lawyer for the mob in Las Vegas.
Mm.
That's how he became rich and famous. And when they had the movie Casino, you know who played the lawyer for the mob? Oscar Goodman.
Ha 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 ha.
They said, let's get Oscar to play this. It's absolutely the guy.
Yeah.
Okay, and there he was with his briefcase. Now, Oscar Goodman's mother was interviewed once, and she famously said, Oscar's clients don't bother anybody. They only kill one another. That's what I thought. I think that's hilarious.
Yeah. Yeah.
But in the old mafia, there was a lot of truth to that. You see, you don't mess with the church.
Mm.
See, you do anything to the Catholic Church or really any church, they get rid of you.
Mhm. You
That's a
disappear.
no-no. See,
Yeah.
so that's not anarchy. Actually, their government is a level 5 government. It's a fascist government.
Mm.
So this is a gradual scale, meaning you proceed by gradients from one level to the next. There's no jump here, as would be the case in a quantum scale. And you see this all the time. If you've been paying attention to the United States has been gradually going down this scale since they killed Kennedy.
Yeah.
On November 22nd, 1963, America was a level 3 government.
Mm.
Okay? And if you pay attention to the news, it's been going down, down, down. Now, not all the states are going down at the same rate. Okay? California, for example, is a fully fascist government that is morphing into communism, level
Mm.
6. And if you don't believe me, go live there for a while and see what happens. I lived there. I got the hell out of there. I said, these people are crazy.
A lot of people are leaving.
Yeah. Mainly the people who are staying are the people who are so rich that they're insulated.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know, in California, you can pay a fee, a large fee, and then any tickets you get just go away.
Wow.
Did you know that?
I did not know that.
Yeah. It's like, so it's like $25,000, and it
Yeah.
doesn't matter what speeding tickets you go, they just disappear.
Whoa.
That's fascist.
Yeah.
How is that equal application under the law?
Yeah.
It's
It's
not.
not.
Okay? And I could tell you 100 stories about what goes on in California. But I had enough of it happen to me that I said, I'm getting the hell out of here while I still can.
Yeah.
So they are now turning communist.
I believe it.
If you now, there is actually on the books a law in California, if you want to leave the state, they fine you. You have to pay money to get out of the state.
What?
Yes.
Wow.
And they are now talking about a wealth tax on top of all the other taxes, where
Yep.
if you have a certain amount of assets, they just go in and confiscate it. Okay? That's
Mm.
communism. They're morphing into communism. So that's not what's going on in Florida. Okay?
What's
So,
sad is most laws that start there end up trickling and creeping outward into other
yeah,
states.
but you're seeing a rebellion now where all
Mhm.
the people fleeing
Yeah.
those insane states are going to the sane states, and so making them stronger, uh, so that they're not going to have to put up with that where they
Mhm.
are.
Yeah.
So anyway, there's one paragraph in this chapter where I go through the entire history of the United States in one paragraph
Mm.
and tell how the United States went from being where it started at a libertarian government to being where it is now, which is a fascist government. That is what it is.
Didn't take long.
Took about 60 years.
Yeah.
So, what are we measuring with this? As with all the other scales, you have to understand, as an engineer, if I write a scale, I'm going to tell you what we're measuring with this scale.
Mm-hmm.
If I give you a piece of wood, that doesn't help you. But if I mark out inches on it, that's useful. You can measure the drapes, right? So at the right, on most of the scales, there is a dotted vertical line. That is the axis. In other words, what are we measuring? What is the standard by which these various levels are in their allotted places?
Trust.
At the top of above level 1, we have complete trust and agreement. Now, in this universe, absolutes are unattainable. So you're never going to have complete trust and agreement. You would have, in a libertarian government, a legitimate libertarian government, you would have a lot of trust and agreement. Okay? That will not happen in our lifetimes. Okay?
Mm-mm.
Don't hope for it. It's not going to happen. In some distant future, maybe. But below level 7, you have no trust or agreement. Again, absolutes are unattainable. So let's say you take your car out on the road, right? And you're going one way and the other guy's going the other way. You're sort of trusting this guy that he's not going to come across the double yellow line and crash into you at 120 miles per hour cumulative velocity, right? There's like an agreement there. You stay on your side of the road, I stay on my side of the road, nobody gets hurt. You see?
Yeah.
So it's how much trust or agreement is there? So let me ask you, do the American people trust the government? Right.
No.
So there are two groups of people that actually trust the government. Okay? I'm not talking about what they say, because there are people who have reasons for saying they trust the government. Right? This is just like the famous mafia boss, Joe Colombo, who was assassinated because he had a big mouth, going around saying, there's no mafia. What mafia? There's no such thing as a mafia. Right? So there are people in the federal government who are just like that.
Yeah.
Okay? They're not going to say what they actually think. So, Jackie Mason, may he rest in peace, one of my favorite comedians, he was once asked, would you rather have Reagan or Nixon? He said Nixon because I'd rather have a crook who knows what he's doing.
Yeah.
Whether or not you agree with his characterization, there are crooks who know what they're doing. All right? So the people behind the scenes who are pulling the strings on Biden, they know what they're doing. They're not blithering idiots like Biden is. No. There are people who will not admit that Biden is a blithering idiot. They're just liars. Okay? Because anybody with an IQ over 80 can see that that's what he is.
Yeah.
It's like, Jackie Gleason, when his wife would say, well, she knows that he was out bowling, and she says, where have you been? And he says, hama, 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 hama. Do you ever see those episodes?
Yeah.
That's what Biden is. Hama, 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 hama.
Right.
As opposed to Obama, he had a ready answer. We're not talking about an idiot. Or Bill Clinton, smart man. He made some big mistakes, but not a dopey guy. So I'm saying these are three guys all in the same party, all presidents.
Yeah.
Right? So I'm not taking a political position here. I'm just saying, anybody who's paying attention in the United States now knows this is a fascist government. Now, the people who run it, what I call the globalist fascists,
Yeah.
that's what they want. They're
Yeah.
happy with that.
It's their
They're,
plan.
they're never going to admit that. They're just going to lie.
Yeah.
So if you watch congressional hearings and, they call Mayorkas in front of them and they ask him a simple question like, is the border closed?
No.
And he gets hamana, hamana, hamana. You just get double talk.
Yeah.
So he's not going to admit what he's doing. So there are two groups of people, basically, in the United States and in most of the industrialized world now.
Mhm.
There are the people who actually see what's going on and say what it is, and that would include you and me. And then there are the people who see what's going on and lie about it.
Yeah.
So you see, recently, Biden had a big event, and Obama and Clinton were there. Okay? These are two smart men. They know he's a blithering idiot. They know he's a moron. Donald Trump once asked Ted Kennedy, who's the stupidest senator? He said, Joe Biden. Okay? This was many years ago before he
Yeah.
was senile.
Yeah.
Okay?
Quite a while. Yeah.
Right. So that's who they want. And sometimes they ask him, well, are you going to take questions? He'll say something like, oh, I'll get in trouble if I do.
Mm.
Do you hear him say that? He says that often
Yeah, very often.
because he's just too stupid.
Yeah.
Bill Clinton would never say that. He'd say, sorry, that's all the time I have today, and he would go. See?
Yeah.
That's why he left with a high approval rating. Whereas Biden, his approval rating it's not even in the toilet. It's down the toilet.
Oh yeah. Non-existent.
All of the major constituencies are leaving him now. Look at the polls. Okay. So again, I'm not expressing an opinion about politics. I'm just telling you what's there to see what's in front of you. The
Yeah.
American people. Now, the last election in Arizona, okay? I live in Arizona. I talk to people all the time. I have lots of friends, right? And I like people. I talk to people. I'll be standing in the line at the bank and talk to a guy. My son used to say to me, why do you talk to all these people? I like people.
Yeah.
So believe me, the common knowledge in Arizona now is on both sides of the aisle is that the last election was fixed.
Mhm.
And I will tell you, it's equally common knowledge that how did that happen? The cartels from Mexico bribed the election officials and the judges so
Yeah.
that we had Kerry Lake was ahead by 11 points a week before the election, and she loses. Well, how does that happen?
Mhm.
I had never heard of that before. 11 points ahead, and then you lose a week later?
Yeah.
Well, duh.
And that's another thing too. How do you lose votes? How do your votes go down instead of up? They only go up, not down.
Right, right. So, and she's running for senator. She's polling very, very well. Arizonans like her. Okay, she is a popular person here. So, how did that happen? So, not only did they bribe the election officials to bring in suitcases of phony ballots,
Mm.
because we had an election that went on for 2 weeks.
Yeah.
Why did it go on for 2 weeks? Okay, the polls closed at 7:00. We should have an answer by 8, 9:00, 10:00, maybe the next morning. But 2 weeks? Because they were trying to figure out how many phony ones do we have to put in here and where do they have to go and how can we sneak them in, right? Okay,
Yeah.
that's what went on. Everybody knows that. The Democrats know it and the Republicans know it. I'm telling you.
Mhm.
The question is, will they admit it?
Mm-mm.
So if you ask a Republican, was the election in Arizona faked or phony? They'll say, yeah. You ask a Democrat, they say, oh no. No.
Yeah.
Right? So that's what you have to realize, that it's not that people don't know we have a fascist government. It's that the people who are installing that government against the will of the people, that's what they want. They're not going to admit that.
Mm-hmm.
Okay? So, of course, there are always a few brain dead people who genuinely don't have a clue what's going on.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, one of them is the president of the United States right now. Uh, and
Yeah.
in some ways, that's a good news, because people look at this guy and say, "How can I vote for this guy?" I mean, it, Robert F. Kennedy Jr. is running as a third-party candidate. He was a Democrat his whole life.
Yeah.
They did everything they could to get rid of him. He would have beaten Biden in a fair primary.
Yeah.
People like him. Uh, so you have to realize that when you're talking about government, you're talking about lying. Okay? Lying. And as I say in the book, the names of the parties are always disingenuous. The Republicans in the United States, they're not Republicans, they're Democrats.
Mm-hmm.
The Democrats in the United States are not Democrats. They're actually a coalition of socialists, fascists, and communists. Now, Bernie comes right out and says, yes, I'm a socialist. Good
Yeah.
for him. Thank you, Bernie.
Yeah, at least he told
See,
the truth.
he doesn't bother me. I like to listen to Bernie. He's not a dopey guy.
Yeah.
Okay? I'm not saying I'm going to vote for him or not going to vote for him. I'm just saying he tells you where it's at.
Mm-hmm.
But then you have all these other guys that they just lie to your face.
Yeah.
So the issue is, who's the best liar? See? Some people are
Yeah.
better liars than others. Uh, Bill Clinton was a very good liar. I mean, he deserves some credit for that.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not saying he was a bad president, but he could keep a straight face. His wife wasn't that good. She comes out and says the basket of deplorables. Biggest mistake
Yeah.
in election history. She lost the election on that. Okay? Bill never would have said that.
No.
He's too smart to say that. So you see, when you get to people like Biden and Hillary, they're not good liars. I don't know if you noticed, but you have to be smart to be a good liar.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
You have to keep everything straight in your mind. And that's why Carla Gambino never went to jail. Everybody in New York, trust me, I'm from New York, okay? I was still living in New York when he died.
Mm.
I walked by his house 10,000 times. Okay, you live in my neighborhood. Never lived in a mansion, never drove a Cadillac, sent his son to the same college I went to. He was like a regular guy, smart. And the idiot who took over for him eventually, John Gotti, died in prison. You know
Mm.
why? He was a dopey thug. He went around with his flashy suits and his fancy cars, Uh, and he allowed drug dealing to go on, which Carla Gambino never allowed.
Yeah.
So Sammy the Bull Gravano, who was the right-hand man of Gotti, was dealing heroin. They caught him. So they had, because of RICO, they got all the surveillance tapes. They had him. They
Mm.
said, look, you have two choices. You go to prison for 25 years, which for him would have been a life sentence, or you go in the witness protection program. We give you a new name, a house, a car, and you live happily ever after. But you have to tell us everything you know.
Yeah.
So Sammy the Bull Gravano got on the stand and told everything he knew. That's how they got Gotti. Okay? So he was guarded by armed guards 24 hours a day before he went into witness protection. So you see, the smart guys like Gambino and Putin and Clinton, they get away with things because they can keep a straight face. They're not going around calling people a basket of deplorables.
Yeah.
That's dopey.
Really.
You don't get elected that way. And a lot of people like Bernie because he said what he thought. You know, he said, there should be no billionaires. Okay, a lot of people agree with that. I'm not saying I do. I'm just saying
Yeah.
he's straight.
Yeah. Except for the billionaires.
Well, so he would be interviewed. I would watch him. You know, he gave a good interview. This is a socialist. Okay. So as opposed to these guys who lie and try to sneak everything by you. So we have to realize when you're dealing with political parties, the names of the parties are always misleading. For example, the conservatives in the United States, the actual conservatives, few though they are, they're not actually conservatives. They're restorationists. They want to bring back that which is long gone. They want to bring us back to the Eisenhower administration. See? Those are restorationists. They're not conservatives. So if you actually listen to what people say, rather than just look at the label, and this is true all over the world. In the Soviet Union, they said the Union of Soviet Socialist Republics. They weren't socialists. They were communists, right? Now, if they were honest, which would be a complete fantasy because they were never honest, they would have said Union of Soviet Communist Republics. Well, thank you. That's who they are. So you got to realize that there are all kinds of layers of phoniness mixed up in all of this.
Yeah.
So as the people become less trustworthy and less agreeable, they go down this scale and the government follows them. People in the United States now are nothing like they were when Jack Kennedy was killed.
Yeah.
Okay? Now you have a few old people who were children then. You can't say they're the same because they went from being children to being almost dead. Right? The rest of the people do not resemble them at all. If you go back and watch on YouTube Jack Kennedy on Face the Nation, okay? No wonder they killed him. This is a guy, he wanted us out of Vietnam, and he was ready to pull the troops out. He wanted to make peace with the Soviets, was talking to Khrushchev behind the scenes. He told the Treasury to print its own money instead of the Fed. You know, he made a lot of really bad enemies.
Yeah.
So eventually they said he has to go. And that's pretty much the same thing they're doing with Trump, except they're using the judicial system to assassinate him.
Yeah.
And I think the reason for that is, number one, Trump as a former president is protected by the Secret Service. And
Yeah.
he is compliant with them. If they say we need to put 1-inch thick glass in these windows, he says, do it. Okay? Also, in case you haven't heard, he has his own Secret Service.
Yeah.
He has what you might call a militia
Mm.
that he brought in from Europe.
Oh, wow.
So they would not be under the control of the US. And they guard him and his family 24 hours a day.
That's what makes it so interesting. The
Yes,
irony
because
behind all of this.
they would be very, very difficult to kill him.
Yeah.
Now, they could drop a 2,000-pound bomb on a stadium while he's having a Trump rally and kill 50,000 people. But I think even the globalist fascists are chary of doing that.
Yeah.
You know, that might be a bridge too far. But I'm
Yeah.
sure there are people in the CIA who are advocating that because they
Yeah.
got to get rid of this guy. So who knows what they're going to do between now and November 5th. But don't be surprised when bad things happen. Maybe we'll have another pandemic,
They've been talking about it.
or maybe we'll have a terrorist attack from any one of the thousands of terrorists who've come across our border.
Mm-hmm.
You know, they're probably getting ready to take out the whole electrical system.
They're even talking about the UN Security Council doing an event.
Right. So who knows what's going to happen between now and November 5th. But that's not a surprise because this is a fascist government. So this is patently obvious to both sides. Okay? So if Trump goes like this, they prosecute him.
Yeah.
Biden commits hundreds of crimes. They have the evidence. Nothing happens. Okay? So they tried to give his son a sweetheart deal. The judge said, I never saw a deal like this before. Have you? The lawyer said, no. Okay, well, I'm not accepting it.
Yeah.
Right? They sent it back. But so that's what you get in a fascist government. Okay? So, if Biden shot somebody in the head and it was on video, they would say it's AI. It didn't really happen.
Mm.
Okay? Those are the globalist fascists that run the country.
Yeah.
Now, the reason that Trump got elected was that a lot of people wanted an outsider. They were sick of this because the country's been spiraling down for 60 years.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I could write a 20,000-word essay and cite chapter and verse exactly how that's true. But I don't think I need to because most people see it.
Yeah. It's very evident.
Only people who don't see it
Yeah.
are drug addicts, they're stoned out of their mind, alcoholics, people who never see the news,
Yeah.
crazy people, tinfoil hat people who think they're on Mars, But everybody else, people like us, we live in a house, we drive a car, we pay taxes, we balance our checkbook. Everybody knows.
Mm-hmm.
So it's just that so many people admit it and so many people don't. So I said in my book, if the government does not destroy this book, like buy up all the copies of it and burn it, I'll be surprised.
Yeah.
If they don't have me assassinated, I'll be surprised. So my attitude is to these globalist fascists, go ahead and kill me.
And get your book before it disappears.
So I have an irrevocable commitment to the truth. That's what's in my book. Period. None of it is my opinion. It's just there.
Mm-hmm.
And I explain with specificity in this chapter how this works. Okay, so let's go through the 7. Anarchy, there's no attempt to control. See, government is about control. That's all government is a system of control. In anarchy, there's not even an attempt to control. We're just going to let everybody run wild.
Yeah.
There's a lot of that going on in the US now,
Mhm.
and in other places too. You know, the crime rate in Venezuela has gone down by 67%. That's interesting. What happened to all those criminals? Oh, they all came north.
Mhm.
And the DAs, while they're busy prosecuting Trump, they're turning these murderers and rapists loose. That don't bother me. I'm busy.
Yeah.
Okay, so up from that, the next level up is communism. Communism controls covertly. These are inherently dishonest people. You never got an honest answer from the Soviet Union. They are completely covert. They say, oh, we love the people. We're going to take care of the people, benefit the people. It's all for the people. Meanwhile, you have some guy who's living in a dacha. He's got 2 limousines with chauffeurs. He's got 3 girlfriends, and he's snorting cocaine, and drinking Cristal. Okay? So, did you ever notice that I have no jewelry? No
Correct.
jewelry. People ask me, why do you have no jewelry? There are thousands of starving people in the world. People who have not enough food, they don't have potable water, they don't have houses to live in, they don't have clothes, they don't have medical care. I am not going to wear jewelry as long as that's the truth.
Mm.
When all the people in the world have everything they need, then I might consider
Yeah. Yeah.
having a piece of jewelry. To me, it's morally reprehensible. Now,
Mhm.
what other people do is none of my business. I don't tell other people what to do. But that's the way I look at it. And that's the exact opposite of what you have in communist countries. Fidel is there smoking his $5 cigar, and drinking his imported wine. And the people of Cuba are barely living.
Yeah.
That's what
Almost
goes on.
starving.
Look at North Korea.
Mm.
Well, Kim Jong Il, did I get his name right? Kim Jong Il?
Kim Jong-un.
I forget. Anyway, he lives a palatial life, right?
Yeah.
And most of the people in this country have lice. Okay? They have shortages of everything. It's a hellhole.
Yeah.
So that's what communism is. It control covertly.
Mm.
These are criminals who say, we're going to take it away from the Rockefellers and the Kennedys and give it to the people. And they don't.
Mhm.
That's what you get.
Yeah.
And the reason that they don't is they control everything. So, it's if Joseph Stalin famously would have photographs, there would be people in the photographs with him, and he'd have them airbrushed out of the photo so that they never existed. Well, that guy's is in an unmarked grave with 2 bullets in the back of his head.
Mhm.
Okay? So the reason why the Russians lost 20 million people in World War II, far more than anybody else, is that Stalin executed almost all the officers
Eh.
in the Russian military. So these are guys who devoted their lives. They went to military academies. They had 10, 20, 30 years of experience. He thought this guy's a threat to him. He disappears in the middle of the night. So when Hitler attacked, they had to make sergeants into captains, corporals into lieutenants. They had no idea what they were doing.
Mm.
So they would throw 10,000 men against the Nazis. Okay? The Nazis would kill them all. The Nazis would lose 100 guys. They'd throw another 10,000 guys against the Nazis.
Yeah.
The Nazis would kill them all. Nazis would lose 100. After a while, the Nazis were wiped out. So Because communists don't care how many people they kill. Killing people is what they do. What was Stalin's famous quote? One man's death is a tragedy. A million persons' death is a statistic.
Oh, yes. Yeah.
I may not
Heard
be
that one.
quoting him right, but
Yep.
okay. So, we're talking about a guy who, not even people who were in his face, just people he suspected might have given him trouble. So, when you do that, you get exactly what you had in the Soviet Union, which was a catastrophe.
Mm-hmm.
Still hasn't recovered, even though it's not a communist country anymore. It still hasn't recovered. So, up from that is fascism. Now, fascism does not control covertly, fascism controls brutally. They say, you do what we say or you die.
Mm.
Right? The Nazis, the fascists in Italy, right? That's how they worked. So it's not covert. They're right. Okay. Oh, the Jews were a problem. Round them all up, kill them all. That's not covert. It's brutal.
Yeah.
So that's what fascism is. That's what the United States has now. Okay. The people of the United States are being crushed by the federal government.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Everybody on both sides knows this. It's just that on one side they won't say it, and the other side they will.
Yeah. Yeah.
But look at the polls. They have this question they always use: is the country on the right track or wrong track?
Mhm.
I think the last number I heard was something like 86% said the country's on the wrong track. Okay? That other 14% are either drug addicts, people who are in insane asylums. They're just like way out there, crazy people.
Yeah.
Anybody who's like a normal guy, has a wife and a job, uh, makes his car payments, he knows it's on the wrong track. Now, up from that is socialism. Socialism controls antipathetically. This is not obvious. Okay? Go to the DMV. How do they treat you? Now, that was not the case 60 years ago in the United States. So I've had innumerable experiences like this of being treated antipathetically by
Mm-hmm.
people in power. I could make your hair stand on end.
Yeah.
Okay? It's not just me, everybody gets that. And again, this is no big secret. So socialists are not brutal, but they are antipathetic. Because look, they're going to take your money away from you and give it to somebody else.
Mm.
That's antipathetic.
Yeah.
So, all right, so you worked your way through college, you paid your debts, then you paid for grad school, then you got a nice job, okay? And now we're going to take 40% of your money away from you as a punishment for all that and give it to some guy who's a bum. Literally, a bum.
Mm-hmm.
He has nothing, he has no degrees, he never held a job. He walks in, they give him food stamps, just like that.
Wow.
Right? You know who's paying for those food stamps? You are.
Mm-hmm.
Okay? That's socialism. Okay. So, see, this sequence is not obvious. People don't get this. If you try to parse it in terms of left and right, you can't understand it.
Yeah. Yeah.
They say, oh, the fascists are on the right. Really? There is no right. What right? Now, up from socialism is democracy. Democracy controls indifferently. Now, if you were around before 1963, what you got from the government was a lot of indifference. You know, you go to the DMV, they say, oh, did you want something? Yeah, I'm applying for my license. Oh, well, let me finish my lunch. You know,
Mm.
I think he's indifferent. Right? Well, people were used to that.
Yeah.
That's what you get in a democracy. The government is indifferent. They're not hiring 86,000 more IRS agents as they are the present government trying to. That's not indifferent. They're going after you.
Yep.
We have money and we're going to take it away. Meanwhile, the president's son has been evading taxes for 10 years that we know of. And they let the statute of limitations run out, so they couldn't even prosecute him for it.
Hmm.
See? So, in a democracy, they control indifferently. You know, it's like they don't really want to hurt anybody. They don't really want to take anything away. They're just kind of indifferent.
Yeah.
Now, up from that is a republic, which is what this country was supposed to be under the Constitution.
Mm-hmm.
The republic controls carefully. Read the founding fathers. Read what they said, what they believed. They were very careful. Okay, well, look, if we have this president that you're saying, what if he decides to do this? Oh, well, then we'll have to balance it by that. So that doesn't happen. See, that's where the checks and balances came from. That's where the Bill of Rights came from.
Mm-hmm.
People said, well, no, if you're going to set this up, we have to have guarantees. They're not going to take away our guns. They're not going to prevent us from practicing our religion. They're not going to prevent us from speaking. Well, et cetera, the Bill of Rights. See, that's being careful.
Yeah.
That's what you get from Republicans. They're careful, cautious. So this is like, you know, if you deal with bankers are very cautious,
Oh, yeah.
right? Or you want to borrow $30,000. Well, prove to us that you can pay it back.
Mm-hmm.
See? That's caution. You could be the guy's best friend. He's still going to be cautious. Okay? So
Hmm.
that's why when you go for a loan, they do their own due diligence. Right? Oh, you want us to loan you $50,000 on your house? Well, they send an appraiser. They want to know. See? They're controlling cautiously. That's what the Republic was set up to be initially.
Yeah.
And the highest level is libertarian, which is very little control is needed. So, is there any place on earth where very little control is needed? If there is, it's news to me. I don't know of any such place.
Not that I know of.
Right. So, the truth is, there are no, if somebody can correct me on this and show me an example, I'll be happy to be corrected. But so far as I know, and I watch the news about 2 hours a day, 365 days a year. Okay? There are no sane governments.
No.
It's a matter of degree. You see? It's a matter of like the communists, they had a guy with a machine gun. And when they attacked, if you retreated, they shot you.
Hey.
You had a choice of charging toward the Germans and you're likely to get killed, or retreating and you are definitely going to get killed. Okay? That's communism. Well, everybody knows how brutal the fascists were,
Yeah.
right? So, you know, if you, the best example of it I know of is a famous theologian. I'm wondering if I can remember his name. I'm sorry, I can't remember his name. German name. He was executed by the Nazis about 2 days before Berlin fell.
Oh.
He stood up against the Nazis. He said, no, I do not agree with what you're doing, and I, as a Christian, cannot condone it. They put him in prison, and eventually they hanged him. He has a very German name. I wish I could remember it. And he wrote a very famous book while he was in prison about that whole phenomenon, in which his thesis is the fundamental problem with the human race is stupidity, because there's nothing you can do about it.
Yeah.
Didn't you tell me you have a sign that says something like "Never argue with a stupid person" or something like that?
Well, that reminds me of that sign right here in the back.
I
It
can't
says,
read it, but
you can't fix stupid.
okay, there you go. You can't fix stupid. So this was a very smart man. He was very, I think he held a doctorate, if I remember correctly.
Yeah.
Very highly educated man, wrote many books, and they hanged him. That's the Nazis. They control brutally. You know, there's a famous story about Mussolini. He had some lady who was a journalist who got into his office to interview him. And, you know, she was asking him questions. Well, you know, what about this? What about that? Typical journalism a la 1942 or whatever year it was, right?
Yeah.
And she kind of said, well, yes, but what about this? What about decimating the North Africans? You know, she raised these issues. You know what he did? He raped her right there on the spot.
Yeesh.
So that's fascism.
Hmm.
You don't get that with socialism. Socialism it's antipathetic, but it's not brutal.
Yeah. Yeah.
So what is the level of the population? Okay, I can tell you because I was there. The people who voted for Jack Kennedy were dramatically superior to most of the people living in the United States today.
I believe it.
I'm not saying that you should have voted for him or not voted for him. I'm just telling you how the population has changed.
Mm-hmm.
You know, there's a joke I like to say. In Arizona, formal attire means your shirt has buttons on it.
Yeah.
That's America today. You ever watch old movies of baseball games?
Mm-hmm.
Like 1960 World Series? So here's like 50,000 people. They all had on suits, ties,
Mm-hmm.
coats, hats, you know. I don't think I've even seen a suit since I've been in
Yeah.
Arizona.
Well, when I grew up, I wasn't allowed to leave the house, even if it was to go to the grocery store or anything, just something that simple. I had
Yeah.
to dress up.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah.
Uh, this country has deteriorated, and anybody who's paying attention can see that,
Yeah. Yeah. We lost our morals and self-respect.
and everything else:
Yep.
intelligence,
Mm-hmm.
education, etc.
Yeah.
I mean, if you listen to Jack Kennedy, he was brilliant. You know, he and Ike were close. They got along fine. Two different parties. Do you know that Jack Kennedy and Richard Nixon were friends?
Hmm.
They disagreed on some things, but they were very minor things.
Yeah.
They were both anti-communist. You know, they were patriots. They fought in the war. They were both lawyers. They were very similar people. Now it's like half of the people in the country, no, I wouldn't say half, a third of the people in the country want to exterminate another third of the people in the country.
Yeah.
And then there's a third in the middle who are just saying, I want to stay out of the line of fire.
Yeah.
That's pretty much where we are now.
Yeah.
So of course, the government has deteriorated. So, for example, if you look at Japan, all right, Japan was a fascist nation. The best thing that ever happened to Japan in its entire 1,000-year history is General MacArthur.
Mm.
He went in there and he turned it into a socialist state.
Yeah.
Okay? So they don't have that brutality anymore. It's not a fascist government like it used to be. Same thing with Germany, the Marshall Plan.
Mm.
We rebuilt Europe. After we knocked it all down, we built it all back up again. Okay? So Germany went from being a fascist state to being a socialist state. Okay? Different type of place. So the reason I mentioned Jack Kennedy is this was not a timid person.
Mm-mm.
Listen to him speak.
Yeah.
Not only was he smart and insightful and educated and articulate, he was not a coward.
Yeah. He was a forceful speaker.
He wasn't just a forceful speaker, he was a forceful man.
Yeah.
And so all they could do was put a bullet through his head. And there's basically two groups of people who believe that he was killed by Oswald: idiots and ignoramuses.
Mm-hmm.
Those are the two groups, okay? Because even as a kid, I didn't believe that.
Yeah. I've never believed it.
Yeah. So there's 100 books out on the subject. And most of them are very well documented.
Yeah.
So they had to get rid of him. Okay? That was a coup. You never hear that said. You never hear that there was a coup in the American government.
Mm-hmm.
The people who committed that coup know it was a coup. I mean, LBJ was behind the whole thing. He was about to go to prison. And he got Kennedy into his territory, Texas, set the whole thing up with the CIA, took him out, and the two different investigations that were going on in the Department of Justice went away because he was going to go to prison.
Yeah.
Okay? So, and then you see what happened to the United States in the 70s. It was chaos, right? All the drugs took over. And the education system has been spiraling down
Oh, yeah.
ever since.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, Kennedy, when he ran in 1960, he talked about bettering the education system. Well, what did we get? I mean, you either go to a private school or are homeschooled, or you get educated in drugs, sex, violence, promiscuity, and crime.
Yeah.
That's it.
Yeah.
And brainwashed with weird ideas.
That's the thing is I think the education system shouldn't be public anymore. It should be private. It shouldn't be controlled by the government. Government should keep their hands off of it.
Many people believe the Department of Education should be closed down.
Yeah.
Because at least you get the feds out of it that way.
Yeah, because that was Rockefeller, wasn't it? Or was it? Yeah,
Well,
Rockefeller. Rockefeller Foundation and stuff.
yeah.
And yeah, they started the whole public education system.
Well, America had public education from the beginning. I mean,
Yeah. Yeah.
the one room schoolhouse, you know.
Mm-hmm.
But it wasn't a big deal because so many people either didn't go, or if they went, you were not being educated by a communist
Yeah.
or an anarchist. It was like a regular lady, you know, who had gone to college, and she taught these 15 kids at whatever age they were and how to
Yeah.
read and write, you know. So it was pretty harmless.
Mm-hmm.
But after they got rid of Kennedy, everything in the nation went down. Everything. All the movies, all the music, all the TV, and all the bad things, promiscuity and drugs, they all came in. And if you actually study the statistics, it's not subtle. You have to just either not know or lie about it.
Mm.
You know, prior to the 60s, overwhelmingly black families were two-parent families. So now I think it's something like 75% of blacks are raised in a one-parent family. Oh, you think that has an effect?
Oh, it does. Yeah.
I'm not going to
Destruction.
quote what Johnson said because I don't want to offend anybody, but it's pretty scary stuff. It was all intentional.
Mm.
So, any questions about this?
No. No. I mean, I knew we were going to touch on this and take a little bit more to touch on this because it's a sensitive subject, and it's only sensitive because it affects everybody.
Right.
And everybody's subjected to it. Everybody is forced to be subjected to it because, hey, in order to be able to have a change and to be able to change something, is we have to know more about it, and we have to
You know,
people need to know the truth.
prior to the 70s, this was not a political nation.
Yeah.
Nobody talked about politics. You didn't even know. You know, you could go out with a girl for 2 years and find out, oh, you're a Democrat? I didn't know that.
Right.
Didn't come up. Nobody cared.
Yeah.
You know, I went to hundreds of parties in my youth. Hundreds. Okay.
Yeah.
Family, friends, school, you name it, right? Nobody ever said anything about politics.
Yeah.
It just didn't come up. And they might mention Eisenhower, they might mention Kennedy, you know, one sentence, and oh yeah, he's advocating so and so, but that's it.
Yep.
It was not a politicized nation. It was a single nation where there was not really that much difference between the two parties. Honestly, wasn't much difference between Nixon and Kennedy when they ran against one another.
Yeah. Now, that's
Oh,
all.
now Kennedy would be being treated like Donald Trump.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yep.
And it's not only him. How about Daniel Patrick Moynihan, Senator Patrick Moynihan? He was a very smart man. He worked for 4 different administrations, 2 Republican and 2 Democrat. Think about that now. As a Democrat, he worked in Republican administrations. If he were here today, he would be attacked as a racist and worse. Okay? I wrote to him and he wrote back to me. Can you believe that? Very smart man. So I'm talking about a Democrat here, you know. So this country is not remotely similar to what it was 60 years ago.
Yeah.
It has gone down from level 3 to level 5. And many of the states are on their way to level 6. And smart people are getting the hell out of there
Mm-hmm.
before whatever they have is confiscated.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
Are we ready for the next scale, or do we have time, or what?
We will touch on that next time.
Okay. Any questions before we end?
I do not. No. I'm sure at time of broadcast, a lot of people probably have questions, maybe attacks. We don't care.
I'll tell you. The main thing about this that's revolutionary is it's about trust and agreement.
Mm-hmm.
That is the underlying issue.
Yeah.
Where you have, see, in order to have a libertarian government, you have to have trust. You have to trust the guy.
Yeah.
See? When you have fascism, there's no trust. If you don't say Sieg Heil, you're dead. We don't trust you. You see, it's not enough that you are a good Nazi. You have to say Sieg Heil. When you leave the party, you damn well better say Heil Hitler. Because we don't trust you.
Right? Oh, yeah.
That's the main thing as far as how I got this. And the other thing is realize it's a control mechanism.
Mhm.
How do they control?
Yep.
The style of control changes qualitatively from level to level.
And this is nothing new because there's always been someone, something, some group that's always been wanting to control
Of course.
a mass group of people.
Of course.
Always.
Right.
Even the head caveman, even when cavemen were around, I'm sure there was one caveman that was
Oh,
like,
sure.
"I'm gonna control everybody."
Right.
You know?
Yeah.
So
And as that's why I quoted Thomas Paine. Okay. Government is at best a necessary evil.
mhm.
And I think it was Madison who famously said, if men were angels, no government would be necessary. But
Yeah.
men are not angels. And then he goes on to say, that is why we have to pay attention to how do we control the people who are in control?
Mhm.
See?
Checks and balances.
That right, that is why they set up the government the way it is.
Mhm.
And in great detail, they worked it out. This separation of powers between the federal government and the state government, between the two houses of Congress, between the different branches of government. There's a lot of counterbalance there.
Yeah. Yeah.
See, to
Thank
prevent a
thank God
Hitler
they did that.
from taking over.
Man, smart men. Amazing.
The
Yeah.
greatest assemblage of men since the 12 apostles.
Got that right. Yep. Jim,
Hey, Paul,
thank you very much for your time
it's my pleasure.
once again. And for those who are listening, get the book called Septemics. You can get it on Amazon. Where else can they get it? You can get it from your website?
Yeah, well, actually, I'm in the process of setting it up so you can go to my website and just click on something and it takes you right to buying the book. But
Ah,
as
okay.
of right now, it's go to Amazon, Barnes and Nobles, and go to the publisher. But
Mhm.
more easier than that, if you just type the word Septemics into a search engine, you get hundreds of responses, including all the people selling the book.
Yeah. And it's
So
also
it's
it's on Kindle too, isn't it?
I'm sure it is.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, it's all over the place.
Cool.
It's not hard to
Yeah,
find.
darn right.
You have to avoid this book if you want to not hear about it because it's
Right?
there are like hundreds of videos of me all over the internet talking about this. Hundreds and hundreds. So, who is this guy? Why can't I get rid of this guy? I heard from him yesterday. So it's easy to find Septemics, and you should go to my website because you can hear what many people, many readers have said about it, what many journalists have written about it, what the reviews are. You can listen to a pre recorded introduction to Septemics, which explains it to you in a simple way. And there's even an essay there you can read, which explains it to you
Mhm.
in a slightly more complicated way.
Yeah.
Uh, and you can even read sections of the book itself. So by the time you do all that, you'll wind up buying the book.
Oh, yeah.
Because
Yeah.
when people find out about this, they say, wow.
Oh, yeah.
And, unless the people who just don't want to know and they go back to watching Gilligan's Island on TV.
Yeah. Yeah.
Thanks,
Alright.
Paul.
I appreciate it, Jim. Thank
See
you
you next
again.
week.
Definitely.
Bye bye.
Thank you, everybody, for watching Conscious Radio Network's The Seance, and we will see you next time.